Trophic cascades and the decline of the Tasmanian devil, Buddhism and snow leopard conservation, and diversity in conservation science are some of the topics covered in the February issue of Conservation Biology. I'm Nate Spillman, and I'm joined by the editor of Conservation Biology, Mark Burgman, and we're here to preview what's inside the February issue. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Nate. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
It's a very diverse issue. We've got stuff ranging from conservation flagships and economic valuation, managing bushmeat harvesting in Africa, urban issues in the United States, pollen in New Zealand, deforestation in Mexico. It really couldn't be any more diverse. The Buddhist monasteries, I think we'll talk about later, Mexican wolves, just about anything you can think of is in there. Well, I think holding this paper on traffic cascades is from the point of view of an ecologist, it's fascinating, and from the point of view of conservation, it's got a lot to teach us. So, in terms of intrigue, it tops my list. I think it's a great paper.
Which paper has the widest potential for impact?
Well, I'd like to suggest there are a couple. If I can have two this year, this
Absolutely.
issue. Ginavor's review of recovery criteria. We've been struggling. People have been struggling with recovery criteria for a long time, for a decade or more, and a review was long overdue. I'm glad the review's done, and I really hope that it engenders some constructive dialogue, and then a whole suite of tools are implemented internationally to do this. The other one that I really like is by the paper by Shires on the global implications of marine debris for marine organisms. It's the first global snapshot we've had of this problem, and it tells us that it's going to need serious global attention to solve. And it's a big topic. It's a big problem, and it's going to need some serious coordination to solve.
Mhm. I'd say one of the most thought-provoking topics in this issue is covered in the editorial by Michelle Marvier. And she writes about the best way to achieve conservation success. And she's actually writing in response to an editorial that Michael Soule wrote for a previous issue about the same topic, but from a much different perspective.
What we have, Michael's editorial a couple of issues ago was provocative, and it put a strong position about a particular way of looking at the way in which conservation ought to be done, and it's not everybody's position. When we discussed this last time, Nate, I made that same comment. And what we have, I'm glad to see this, is Michelle Marvier's response to Michael Soule's position. And it takes a very different stance on the best way to achieve conservation goals. An important factor in all of this is that we share the same overarching goals, the conservation of biodiversity, and it's the means by which that may be most effectively achieved that's under debate here. And it's a fascinating issue. If there were not a place for this discussion in this journal, I don't know where it would occur. I think it's the right place for this discussion, and I'm glad we're having it.
Why did you select this paper, and what is the significance of the findings presented in the paper for conservation?
Yeah, this I think it illustrates the discussion between Michelle and Michael about the way in which conservation ought to be achieved. We have a biosphere reserve, which is one of the most iconic and the best protected kinds of reserves that one can have. The editorial in the last issue of Conservation Biology was about conservation reserves in Australia and the potential for them to be eroded. This paper is about, despite the fact we have a commitment to a conservation reserve, it's a decade-long observation of the kinds of human activities that will degrade that reserve despite its status, and the Herculean efforts that a range of people have taken to negotiate, to facilitate, to work with people in that environment to try to achieve the conservation objectives for which that reserve was set up. We cannot deal with these things in isolation. It's naive to think that we can. And I think that this is the heart of the discussion that Michelle Mavier has pitched in her editorial in this issue.
I have here the February issue of Conservation Biology. This issue is actually an open access issue. You can find it online. All the content in this issue is open. Google Conservation Biology Journal, you'll find it there. Or if you're a member of SCB, visit our website, www.conbio.org, and you can log in to your member homepage, and all the content will be there.